It's always a nuclear bomb.
And welcome back to another episode of Exposing Ourselves. I'm Travis Ritchie, and this is episode 16. This is the show where we expose each other to new things. Matt, a big music fan, will assign me one of his favorite albums or playlists to listen to each week, and I, a movie buff, will give him one of my favorite films, and we come together on this podcast to discuss it all. And with me, as always, is my good friend...
Matt Runquist. Hey, Travis. This week, we are going to watch the movie Mission Impossible 4 Ghost Protocol and listen to Dua Lipa.
Yes, we absolutely are. And I'm happy. This is one of the things I've been leaning up to, preparing for, gearing up for.
Gearing up for. I like gearing.
Point.
Yes.
There we go. Trying to get us to this point, regardless. And wow, so how have you been? It's been an interesting week. It feels like a long time since we've talked.
It does feel that way.
No?
Yeah,
Okay.
For sure.
Not just me.
It's going well over here. The big thing that I wanted to talk to you about is actually not me related, but I finished reading that book Caging Skies by Christine Leunens. That is the book that Jojo Rabbit is based on.
Oh, yes.
And I don't want to have a big discussion about it because you haven't read it, but I will say this. I have no idea how Taika Waititi decided I'm going to make a comedy out of this book.
Wow, really?
Yes, the tone of the book. I mean, there are a couple of funny moments in the book, but spoiler alert for Caging Skies, by the way, if you ever thought, I'm gonna read the book that JoJo is based on. But
I think we'll just have a blanket spoiler alert on our show all the time.
Yeah, exactly. Blanket spoiler alert. The book is about, so the movie basically stops about halfway through the book. And so you're not going to read it? Here we go.
Probably not. It's not, no spaceships in it, so.
JoJo keeps her captive for years after the war.
Wow, really?
Yeah, and it's ugly. It's
no.
It's bad.
Please stop talking about it now.
Yeah,
I don't want to hear anything more. I don't want that little boy to be
so
sullied.
He's like at the beginning of the war, he's like 12. At the end of the war, he's like 17. And there's extra characters. I totally understand that, but so it's like Taika Waititi got the germ of World War II, Hitler Youth, girl being saved by his mother. Like he took that shell of a story and then went in a completely different direction with it and was like, none of the rest of this, because it's honestly like he basically imprisons her in the home. Yeah,
okay.
Really
that is both a spoiler alert and a trigger warning and all those things.
Right.
Just a red flag alert to avoid, I think, reading that book. I started reading Dan Brown's latest, which I think is a couple or few years old already. I don't even remember what it's called. I was looking, I don't know what I was looking at, and somehow I was looking at my purchases or my whatever on Amazon, and it turned out that I have owned my Kindle Paperwhite for 10 years. I got one of the first generation Paperwhites, and I got it because at the time my reading habits had gone down quite a bit, and I needed, because I bought an iPhone that could watch Netflix in bed, and so I'd stopped reading. And so I was like, well, how do I make reading convenient again? Or more so, I guess if it was, can I regain my reading passion if it is more convenient and easy? And so I was like, oh, this Paperwhite looks like an interesting thing, and I bought it, and it really did work, and I love reading on the Kindle. And so, but I've owned it for 10 years, and it's a little laggy, a little slow, and I was like, well, I'm sure a 10 years on version of the Paperwhite will be much more exciting to read on. And they had it on sale, so it was $100. They had a 20% off deal and a $25 trade-in for my old Kindle. So
Oh,
I got
nice.
to upgrade to the new one for like $50, and it really is kind of amazing how
Oh,
much
is it
better it
worth it?
looks.
Oh,
It was definitely worth $50.
Okay. I was wondering because I was worried that it wasn't, because I know I had one of the original, not original, like second or third generation Kindle
Hmm.
e-ink ones before the Paperwhites, but also before the advertising, where,
Yeah.
where,
Oh, yeah,
where,
yeah. You know what? I don't particularly mind the advertising because it doesn't pop up while you're reading. It's just
yeah,
kind
no,
of on the standby screen.
yeah, I don't mind it either, but I had one without it. And I loved that. But so is the Paperwhite, is that e-ink? You can read it without a backlight?
Yeah, it's e-ink. So
Yeah.
here's a couple things about. I was thinking about doing a review on this one because there are two things I don't like, but everything else I do like. It is faster. It's much more responsive. The screen is faster, and it looks so much better. Like it's crisper. But there are two things. They seem to be really excited about the flush screen, like the bezel is flush with the screen, and I have found already that causes me to make more accidental touches to the
Mm.
screen and like change the page when I
Yeah.
don't mean to. And secondly, the screen is glarier. Now I'm showing it to
Mm.
you. You can't. Our viewers can't see it, but the surface of the screen is glarier. I would show you my old one, but I've already sent it in, boxed it up to be sent back in. But that's just one little nitpick. It is USB-C, which is nice. That's a nice. I mean, everything should be nowadays, but I don't know why I was surprised to see that it wasn't USB, like micro USB or whatever the old one was. But anyway, but I'm glad I upgraded. And the book I'm reading is Origin, Dan Brown's Origin, which I'm about 5 chapters in, and it seems to be kind of regular for him. Like it's
Dan,
like
it's a
religious
Dan Brown
versus
book.
atheists and like the mystery therein and some sort of like I don't know quite what the big mystery is going to be yet. We haven't revealed that much, but it's very heavily a religious like oh, this will change religion forever and
Nice.
I'm sure someone's going to get killed and then Robert Langdon has to go on some mystery adventure. So that's interesting.
I'm
Um,
happy for Dan Brown that he's just chugging along doing his thing, you
Me too.
know?
You know what? I enjoy his writing. I've read all the Robert Langdon books and a couple of his other ones. I thought the one he did Inferno was a really good book. And the movie was not as good. I watched it and it was kind of disappointing, even though it was a Tom Hanks directed by Ron Howard thing. It just wasn't very good. But
Okay.
I did have, I was telling you before the recording started that I had to do a clean install of the operating system on my iMac, and
Hmm.
which is not super surprising. I bought this thing in 2019, and it has traveled the world with me. I brought it with me to Japan, or actually, I had it shipped ahead of time to Japan, and then brought it back with me in my luggage because at the time you couldn't ship anything from Japan. You couldn't send a birthday card from Japan to the United States because of the pandemic. So I had to pack this giant 27-inch iMac in my luggage and bring it back with me. So it's been through a lot. It went to Nashville, it came back to LA with me, but something along the way has caused it to be laggy. There was a thing where my trackpad wasn't reading unless I had it plugged in. And so I was like, okay, let's do a fresh install. And I was really worried about the hassle of doing that. But I will give Apple some credit here because they have done something with with Mac OS where that the operating system is now separate from your data and settings and stuff. So
Hmm.
like when you do a clean install, you're actually
Hmm.
doing a clean install, but when you restart, all your settings and
Oh,
and
wow.
files are still in place. So it's
That's
not
really
like when we were
impressive.
when we were young and we would reinstall Windows
Oh,
95 or
God.
whatever, and you had to
Yeah.
replace you had to reinstall every
Yeah.
program, all that stuff. That's not the case anymore,
That's
which
incredible.
shocked me. Yeah,
I mean,
I don't know when that
it's really
happened.
nice, privacy concerns aside, it's really nice to like buy a new phone and log into your Google account and just everything popular. I mean, I'm an
Yeah.
Android guy, right? But
Yeah,
like,
yeah,
and
yeah.
I'm sure it's the same way with signing
It's the
into
same
your
with
Apple,
iPhone and iCloud.
you
Yeah,
know, and everything populates. Like you used to like dedicate a half a day to setting up a new phone, and now it's just
yeah,
like sign in and wait for it to download, and you're good. You know?
right. Yeah, and I do like I mean, and the thing that's done for me is gotten rid of anxiety about losing my phone, right? My phone now is literally just a device. It
Yeah.
represents no long-term loss of creativity or information or the things that can't be replaced, right?
Yeah.
All that's just kind of in the cloud and backed up in a couple different places, and I really like that.
Yeah.
So,
No, for sure.
otherwise, this week, interesting week. I had another UCB class. I feel like, oh gosh, here's the interesting thing I did this week. I was hired. I think I could talk about this because they didn't make me sign an NDA or anything. But I was hired to. So in my acting group, someone posted, "Hey, can anybody do like a Charlie Chaplin look or whatever?" And I'm like, yeah, I look enough like Charlie Chaplin with a bowler hat and a little mustache that I could probably pull it off for something. And I said yes. And then the next question was, do you have any photography experience? And I was like, yes, I do, quite a bit. I'm a decent photographer. What are we doing here? And then it turns out that they had this giant like international marketing summit for Warner Brothers executives. So all the marketing people from all over the world came together for this multi-day summit, and they wanted an interactive photographer for this dinner that they were having at a place called Musso and Frank's, which is a like old school Hollywood joint here in like right on Hollywood Boulevard. And I told him, I looked at the website, I was like, this place is dark. And like I've done headshots, I do a lot of nature photography, and but what I don't do is like event photography, which is very like run and gun. Like if you miss it the first time, there's no taking a shot again, those kind of things. And my camera is not a low light camera. So I told him, I was like, I'll do this, but I need you to rent this, Sony AR7 III or Mark IV, I think it was. And I was like, you need to rent this camera for me, and a prime lens, something that has a really fast lens. And they're like, okay, and I'm like,
Yeah, of
okay,
course.
great. And they're like, what's your rate? And I'm like, well, for an actor, I'm like, $50 an hour minimum. And they're like, oh, well, how about $100 an hour? And I'm like, okay.
Yeah.
And so it was like for 4 hours worth of work, I got paid like $400 just to do this thing, and it was
Nice.
And I was worried because even with a good low light camera, it was really dark. And I told him this. I was like really upfront about it. I was like, look, this is still going to be, but the pictures were pretty good, and they were clear. They made it clear to me that they were like, it's more about having you be this old timey look, which wasn't even Chaplin. They just wanted an old timey guy, so they actually
Nice.
had me have this big bulb flash on it that didn't work.
Excellent.
It was just for the look of it, and it was a fun event. It was a fun
Well, that's
event.
really cool.
That was my
Yeah.
big thing this week.
Nice.
Oh,
Well, cool. What do you say we get into it? Let's change
I would
things up a
love
little.
to get into it. Yeah, you want to shake it up?
Yeah, let's shake it up and do the movie first.
Okay.
The fun thing about
Great.
that is I cannot remember which one we did first last
It
week.
doesn't
so-
matter. It doesn't matter. We shake
Yeah.
it up every single week
Shake
and
it
do
up.
whatever we want first.
Yeah.
So the movie this week, I have been leading to this. I have assigned you to watch Mission Impossible 4: Ghost Protocol, starring the venerable Tom Cruise, and Simon Pegg is in it again, and it also Jeremy Renner, which is interesting because I think they were kind of grooming him to take over the series for Tom Cruise, like kind of expecting Tom to leave the series, I think, which is funny because it's the second series that they've done that to Jeremy Renner for. They were also gearing him up to replace Matt Damon in the Bourne series. There's a Jeremy Renner Bourne movie, and but Tom Cruise did not leave Mission Impossible, and this is a notable movie because it is Brad Bird's first live action feature film. We mentioned last week that Brad Bird is well known for directing Iron Giant before he went to Pixar and directed The Incredibles, which is incredible. And then he also directed Ratatouille, which is also just an amazing movie. Yeah. And so this is the movie he did after that. And I think it's wonderful. I went into all the reasons why last week, but I love that it's got a lot of humor. The plans always kind of malfunction. There's lots of improvisation in how they have to do things. The action is kind of visceral and painful, and you feel it even when you're just watching. I watched it on my iPad, and it was just like that there's a sandstorm that happens in the middle of it, and you're just like, oh my God, how is all this done? And I really enjoyed it. So yeah, I think that's all I'm going to say. What did you think of it?
Well, I did not like it as well as 3. I'll start there. So I had enjoyed 3. I don't remember. Do you remember what my rating was for 3? It was a 7 or an 8. But I don't remember.
Yeah, it was pretty good.
It was a pretty good rating. I did not like it as well as 3. Where do I want to start with this? I'll start with the big scene where he climbs the outside of the tower, right?
Yeah.
There was a justification given for why he had to climb the outside of the tower, but it went by very quickly in a way that I was very confused. I was like, wait, why does he have to go outside? What's happening right now? And like, it was very impressive, right? Like, Tom Cruise climbing the outside of the Burj Khalifa.
The Burj Khalifa, yeah.
Like, it's impressive, but it definitely left me going, wait, why? Like, it felt like because I didn't catch or I didn't understand the explanation, it felt like, hey, we can go out on the outside of the Burj Khalifa. Let's do that, right? Like, it felt like a movie-making decision, not like a plot decision, right?
Well, I mean, of course it was, but also it felt very... I mean, look, action movies always have very flimsy reasons to do action, and all you needed to know was they couldn't go in the inside, so they had to go through the outside. That seemed fairly reasonable. I'm surprised that you're getting caught up on this point at all.
Yeah, no, I was bothered by it. I think because like it's such a centerpiece. Like you mentioned it, it's the thing that like if you're identifying which Mission Impossible movie it is to somebody who's doesn't know, you're like, oh, it's the one he climbs up the outside of the tallest building in the world, right? You know, and so for that to be so like my hands are waving, and he's outside, right? I didn't like that, right? Okay, let's go to my biggest problem with this movie. So the movie is called Ghost Protocol, right?
Yeah.
And for most of the movie, the fact that they are on Ghost Protocol is not relevant in any way, right? Like, he's got a team with him. He's got a bunch of resources from the IMF. Like, the only things that really it affects are when their face machine breaks down, and then they have to have Simon Pegg do the hacking from the building rather than from across the world, right? Like that did not feel like enough. Like, why is the movie called Ghost Protocol when it barely affects the plot in any way?
I mean, I disagree that it didn't, but okay.
Well, I mean, maybe I'm missing something. Do tell.
Well, I mean, you just said it right there. Like because they had to improvise so many things in their plans, and all they had was one cache of supplies, and so because of that, the things that they were trying to do didn't work. Like the gloves were malfunctioning, and the you know, the climbing gloves, and the mask was not working, and it just made everything more difficult. And I'm not going to assign you the next movie because because I didn't like it, because the next movie kind of negates the whole Well, I mean, and I guess everything's okay at the end of this movie. They do such a good job that I'm sure that IMF is back in business. But in the next movie, all the gadgets are magical again, and all the gadgets work as expected. And it just, there's nothing really challenging to me about that. Whereas in this one, you do see a lot of that. We have to change what we're doing because we don't have any backup. We're it. But also, he says it at the end. He's like, "Look, I mean, we didn't have anything but each other, and we did it." Like, and I feel like that's a really cool feeling. That like it's kind of like what I felt. Did you see the first the Chris Pine Star Trek movie?
No.
Chris. Oh, well, there's a okay. Well, I won't go into it, but for our viewers who probably have seen it, there's a thing where it's set in a different timeline, but it doesn't negate the Star Trek characters we know, right? They create a new timeline to have this Chris Pine Star Trek universe, but in that separate universe, that crew still ends up together on that ship and somehow makes all of Star Trek feel more important because of it. And so, or at least that original, cast, the original series. And so this kind of felt like that too. Like this team did so well against all odds that it seemed that much more impressive because they were on their own.
So there's one more specific point I want to make, and then there's a general point that I want to make. The specific point I want to make is I didn't really like the bad guy from this one. I mean, he's coming after Philip Seymour Hoffman, who, say what you will about his Buffalo Bill impression, is an extremely menacing,
just
memorable.
The way he talks.
Look,
he was in Patch Adams as like a freshman in med school or something, as a first year med student, and he still had that low voice where he's, I'm your roommate. Oh, go ahead.
And he was a very memorable, menacing character.
Sure. So, that movie, it was about the actor playing the villain. In this one, it's about the villain and his intentions. Like, the actor is nobody I've ever seen before, so.
Yeah, and so the villain in this movie, like, none of his motivations really made any kind of sense to me. It was very much like, I want to blow up the world because I do, right? And then it was like, and he was like, I'm a Russian general, but I'm also a Swedish professor. I can't remember. There was like all this weird backstory about what he was, and it was like, I want to blow up the earth, but I've also got like
the whole time you were watching this movie.
Not
at
all. I watched this movie closely. Yeah.
I mean, all this is explained very well. I mean, like, look, I will say there are a couple things that I have nitpicks about this movie, but none of them are these.
Well, I think we have different opinions about movies, Travis.
Obviously we do. And I'm not going to be upset like I was with Spider-Man. I've learned my lesson. I am just surprised that this one you didn't like as much as Mission Impossible 3.
So I guess what I'm saying about the villain in this is that it felt like they drew him they like had a checklist of things that they wanted him to do. And so they're like, yeah, he's a PhD and he's got all this like military knowledge. And, like it just felt like this smorgasbord of things mashed together that doesn't add up to a person. And then his motivation is I want to start World War III because forget you all. Like it didn't make sense to me. Okay, go ahead.
Well, no, because his reasoning is that the world is overpopulated and all that overpopulation causes strife. And there is scientific evidence that says when mass extinctions happen in the world, it allows new evolutionary advances to happen. Like, we've had 5 or 6 mass extinctions, and following is just a kind of a rebirth of new life and new whatever. And so his logic, and it's crazy. He's crazy. It's very much like Thanos, who you don't know because you haven't seen.
I do actually. I do know the plot of the movie. Yes.
Okay, but it's very similar. Like, his thing is in order to save humanity long term, we need to have this culling. and nuclear war is an instant, fast way to do that. And there's also other like allegories for that in pop culture. Famously, in Star Trek, in order to get the utopia that we see in Star Trek, there is a third world war that is a nuclear war that has to happen before humanity says, oh shoot, we are all the same people, we're not them, we're only us. And it's the nuclear war that does that. And so that's what this guy is thinking. That's what this bad guy is thinking. He's just fanatical about it. And as we've seen, it's pretty easy for people to become fanatical about weird things, right? We've seen that over the last several years in our own country. So, I don't know. For this guy to be so smart.
Yeah, I got to admit, I like it just didn't ring true for me at all. So
that's interesting.
Back to the general point that I want to make is, I'm trying to help you understand like what it is about these things that I don't like. And when a movie like this, so action movies require a suspension of disbelief, and there's like always an accretion of small things that niggle at you and that you have to sort of set aside. And the problem for them is, and a point that I often reach is like, once you reach the point where the movie has lost you, it's lost you for good, right? So like, once I got to the point with this movie where I was like, oh, come on, right? Like, once I reached that point, it could do no good in my eyes. I was like, I was out, right? So, like, when...
I'm just surprised that that happened.
When Russia launches a nuclear missile at the U.S., right? And there's no response whatsoever from NORAD... That's a problem for me.
But that happens in the last 5 minutes of the movie. So
no. I'm just saying, like that is a thing that I would ignore if the movie hadn't already lost me. But the movie had lost me by that point. So I'm sorry. When Russia launches, like, there are protocols. When Russia launches a nuclear missile, we launch 20, and they know that. We know they know that. Like, that's how it works. That's how nuclear détente works. So for it to scrape the outside of the Transamerica building in San Francisco is such a ridiculous outcome in that situation that I'm like, come on, right? If they had done like a tight countdown to him preventing the launch of the missile, that's okay. Right? I can get on board of that. That is a thing that is within the realm of possibility. But you cannot launch an ICBM and have no response whatsoever from the United States. Like, that doesn't happen.
Well, I mean, there are a couple of things about that missile launch that are weird. First of all, the missiles generally don't like, nuclear missiles aren't designed to detonate on impact. They detonate in the atmosphere to provide more damage. They also have multiple warheads per missile, so that would have broken apart into multiple Yeah, there are some things about that are, and I agree, if you wanted it to be more factually accurate, it would have been better to make the deadline earlier. There's a part of me that definitely agrees with you. But there's also a part of me that really enjoyed seeing him fail to prevent the launch, but still try to do something. And yes, in this world, it needed to be that he could, but like it was a subversion of expectations, you know? You may actually like Mission Impossible Fallout, which I think is 6, better in that regard, because it has a little bit more like realistic kind of nuclear danger. It's still a nuclear bomb, but it's kind of like a more realistically depicted.
It's always a nuclear bomb.
There is a couple nitpicks. Like, the nitpick I had was they are in a train in Russia that has just been attacked at the Kremlin. There is no way any train car gets out of that country. Like, they just kind of cut to Dubai, and then they're in Dubai. And I'm like, no.
Yeah.
But, again,
I would say that
suspension
that
of
was
disbelief. And
yeah, but that's one of the things that like builds up that you have to just sort of skip over it, and
well, and you wouldn't even notice that unless you think about it too much. And I think one of the things that I love about this movie is that the action pieces, like, it just keeps going, and you get amazing action piece and set, after amazing action piece, and it's like, after the whole climbing up the Burj Khalifa, which is crazy, and then there's this whole like exchange of information versus diamonds, and they have to do this whole thing, which is, I thought, were really well done. Then they run out into this giant sandstorm that he has to chase the guy down, and that was just like, oh my God, that's incredible.
I thought that scene was very clever. The dust storms scene, the different ways in which he had to track him, the different ways in which he had to figure out how to corner the guy. I think that was really well thought out. I did not hate this movie front to back by any stretch of the imagination. I appreciated, much like the previous movie, I appreciated that the action scenes were understandable. I understood where people were in space and what they were trying to accomplish, which is always important in action scenes, that it's not just people punching each other, or shooting at one another, but that there's something, sensible going on.
Yeah.
And that was really good.
Case...
I wouldn't say this movie overwhelmed me with the Brad Bird touches, I like, if you hadn't told me that this movie was directed by Brad Bird, I wouldn't have picked up on it. Now, that's not to say that there weren't some times that I was like, oh, this particular action sequence, the way this is handled exactly the way an Incredibles action sequence was handled, but I love the action sequences in the Incredibles. So, that definitely read for me. If we're contrasting with MI3, which I think was your intention, one of the things that MI3 did really, really well that this movie, I think, failed at a little bit, is conveying information during those extremely short downtimes in a way that the watcher can make sense of. Because I agree with you. I know that somebody thought about all the issues and explained them, but the dialogue came so thick and fast, and they were so tense and so amped up during the quiet moments that it was too much for me to process in the moment.
Okay.
And I just wasn't so it wasn't that I was looking at my phone. It was just, it comes thick and fast, and you have to pick up on what they're saying and why they're saying it very quickly.
Well, I have seen this movie multiple times now, and so maybe it's that I have seen it multiple times, and so I'm picking up on a lot of the justification and all that stuff that's going on. Yeah. So
actually, I have a question for you. I never understood why they had to do the fake meat.
The fake meat.
Yeah, they set up two fake meetings.
I thought I was thinking Impossible Burgers or something like that.
No, sorry, yeah.
Yeah, where they had the different rooms. Yeah. Well,
yeah, I didn't understand why that was necessary.
Yeah, the reason is because they have to give, they had to give a set of plans. So the guy who was buying the launch codes from the assassin girl, right, needed to think that he had the launch codes and leave. But in order so they both had to, the MI team had to get the launch codes and create facsimile launch codes.
No, I understood what they were doing, but that's what I don't understand. Why did he have to leave? Why don't we just arrest this guy or shoot him or something? He's trying to start, if there was
a reason, but I don't remember what it was.
If there was ever
because he was leading to someone else. No, because it wasn't. They didn't know it was the head guy. They thought it was his henchman, remember?
Yeah, I don't remember that.
They did, because the guy had a mask on.
Yeah.
During the sandstorm, Ethan ripped his mask off.
Yeah.
So it was not supposed to be the head guy. They thought it was his henchman, and they needed the henchman to lead them to the head guy.
Okay, so that does make sense, but again, that information was conveyed so quickly. I mean, that it was hard for me to follow.
Yeah. Okay. That's fair. I mean, it was conveyed, but I get that it was a little hard to follow for you. That's fine. And here's the other thing: the difference between this and MI3 is that in MI3, none of that mattered. Like this one is very like there's an actual plot and a threat, and the thing that's going to happen is dangerous. In MI3, it was like the rabbit's foot was such a MacGuffin that it didn't matter to the plot, whereas this one, the thing that's going to happen was consequential to the plot. That was a big difference between these two movies. And so you did need to understand, I think in part 3, you didn't need to understand the what's it called? The
motivations?
No, the things, the talky bits.
Oh, exposition.
Exposition, thank you. I knew it was an E word. You didn't need to understand the exposition to enjoy the movie and the action bits, but this one you very much needed to get the exposition in order to feel that you understood the justifications for everything. So that makes sense. That's right. A valid criticism.
Yeah. The other thing that I wanted to say, I know, we're gonna get there, but I want to say one thing, which is that if somebody is going to start World War III and has the means to do so, that is the point at which you like shoot him and take your lumps for murdering somebody. Like, I like. Yeah, but they talk about that. I know that somebody's going to start World War III. I'm just going to be in jail for the rest of my life.
They talk about that. Because he's not alone. He's part of an organization, and so they need him alive.
Whatever. That feels like very hand wavy. That feels very hand wavy.
Not really. Whoever acts truly alone in this world?
Okay. Well, anyways, I give it a 5. That's the answer.
Wow. All right. Yeah. Well, this is my this is a 10 for me. There are some issues with me. There are a couple of issues that I found out, but they were all negated. Yeah,
I thought a 10 was a perfect acting. I thought a 10 was a perfect movie.
This is a perfect. This is my favorite action movie. I can't justify giving it any less than a 10.
All right. Cool.
Yeah.
Well,
we are going long. Let's talk about Dua Lipa.
Well, speaking of going long, Dua Lipa. Yeah, Dua Lipa is a pop artist. She is of Iranian and English or British extraction. She first came to popularity about 6 years ago. And I put together a little playlist for you of some of her pop bangers. And I promised you a photo of me in drag, and I forgot to give it to you. But my first public drag performance was to her song New Rules. So, and I love this music because I enjoy it. I enjoy dance music, and I enjoy feeling good. And this is by and large feel good music.
Yeah, it absolutely is. So you gave me a short playlist, by the way. It's less than half an hour long, and I was a little surprised by that, but it was enjoyable, and I was familiar with many more of the songs than I usually am in our playlists, but not necessarily familiar that it was Dua Lipa. Okay, I was not really familiar with her specifically. That happens to me a lot with musical artists. I was aware of Lady Gaga's music before I was aware of Lady Gaga. I was aware of Sia's music before I was, aware of Sia as an artist. And the same thing with this. I've heard her songs. In fact, Physical was a song that we did when I was in Japan. One of the other cast members who was a dancer, when we were all shut down, she led a dance class. And we all learned this dance routine to Physical. So, about 3 years ago now, I heard that song over and over and over and over again for an hour. And so it was very much in my head. And I still love the song. I have been kind of humming that over the last, I think it's probably my favorite song of this playlist. And, but here's so yes, lots of fun. I really enjoyed listening to it. It was very much like I'd be on the bike and I'd be bopping along to these songs. And one of the things that I didn't love though was that I didn't feel like Dua Lipa was particularly unique, I guess. Like, I didn't think that there was anything about her voice that set her apart from any number of other pop, artists that we hear, and I kind of was disappointed by that. Like, she seems like a competent singer, but I think none of her singing came through in this playlist. And I wonder if she has like a song that's a really particularly good singing song. But you know how we've learned now that Lady Gaga is just a phenomenal vocalist, and Sia too, just an amazing vocalist. I'm not getting that from Dua Lipa yet.
Yeah, no, I would not say that she's a super accomplished vocalist. She's I guess, a performer of songs, you would say. She does have a good and sort of unique voice. It like her, it's funny because it's not like a standout voice or anything, but she's got a little bit of depth to her voice that is a little unusual, and yeah, but. I totally agree with you that the attraction of this is not vocal gymnastics by any stretch of the imagination.
Yeah. Does she write her music, any of it, or is she just basically singing songs that are written for her? Do you know?
So let me tell you that you asked me that question last week, and you would think that I would have looked it up in the intervening time, but I did not. And I feel a little bad about that, but if she does write it, it's definitely with one of like a dozen songwriters. That's kind of how songwriting works these days.
Yeah, yeah. Well, I mean, she's certainly an attractive young woman. She was born the year we graduated from high school, which makes me feel a little old. But yeah, I think she's fine. The songs were undeniably fun to listen to, and what's more, they will be added to my playlist for parties and such.
Excellent.
And I do again to Kevin Novacek's point, I am better for having listened to this particular playlist and now kind of connecting these songs with this artist. I don't particularly care about her the way I care about Lady Gaga or Sia or Kylie Minogue or those kind of artists that I like yet. So right now I just like the songs kind of independent of who sang them. Does that make sense?
It does. So if you like this and want to explore further, her album that was released in 2020, which is called Future Nostalgia, I would recommend giving that whole thing a listen. I debated whether to give you that album or to give you a playlist, then I decided to give you a playlist. But Future Nostalgia is front to back an excellent album that might give you a little deeper appreciation of her. Also, I looked it up while you were talking, and she does co-write most of her stuff.
Okay, so interesting. I do think that I would be down to listen to an entire album of hers, and I give you permission to assign that for me on a future episode. Probably not something I will just do because I just don't listen to albums anymore. But I'm open to that. So I don't know what else I can say about this.
Well, I'd like to talk about Physical just real briefly because
please.
You mentioned it. Well, I mean, it is, of course, a reference track, right? It's referencing the Olivia Newton-John song, Let's Get Physical from the early 80s. Well, congratulations, you lucky dog. It references that song, and it's funny because the first time you hear it, it does sound like almost a pastiche of like early 80s dance pop. But there's a little bit of depth there, and it is very listenable, and it doesn't lean too heavily on the connection, but it's definitely there.
Yeah, I didn't really sense. I mean, other than maybe a passing reference, I didn't think it was like I didn't think it was sampling from it or anything like that.
No, it's not sampling from
original.
it. It's just like 80s dance pop electronica.
Yes, which of course that's right up my alley.
Yeah.
And I also like what's the clapping one? What's the one with the clapping? Is that Don't Start Now?
I think so, yeah.
Or you had more to say about Physical.
Oh no! I just wanted to point out the Olivia Newton-John connection for
Oh
anybody
yeah.
who missed it, or anybody who thinks that's a cheesy connection. I'm telling you, I don't think it's a cheesy connection. I think it really works.
Yeah, I mean I thought it's a great song. I had so much fun listening to it. What's is it the I don't know what's the clapping one?
I don't know what the clapping one is.
It's not hand clap because we did that a few weeks ago.
Yeah,
no,
we
this
did.
was anyway. It's a good beat, and I just remember it's one of those songs where every time you listen to it, you can't help but clap with it,
Well,
like on the.
I'll tell you the truth. I love hand claps in music and in all in many different genres. And
Mhm.
I when I'm writing songs, I'm always striving to include hand claps because I think they're fun.
Yeah, me too. So here's one thing I will say about this before I rate it. I listened to this playlist 3 times at
Oh
least,
my goodness.
which is more than I usually do, but it was so short and it was so fun. But I will say, by the third time through, I was getting a little bored of some of the tracks.
That's fair.
Which surprised me because the first time through they're all just like, as you say, just pop bangers, and they get you moving. I was getting a little played out, and maybe it was just too much in too short a time. But yeah, I thought that was interesting. I'm
Yeah.
gonna give this. It's interesting. I'm gonna give this playlist just a really good. Well, I was gonna say 7 or 8. But I think I would give Dua Lipa, from what I know of her so far, because I just kind of found it a little bit generic, uh, wonderful, but I don't know, uninspired somehow. Um, yeah, I'm just gonna give it a 7.
A 7. All right.
Yeah, I
Cool.
think a 7 is fair.
Okay. For this particular playlist, I would give this an 8. I think the Future Nostalgia album I would probably give a 9 to, but I'm an album
Ooh,
guy. Well, I'm an album guy, right? I like that sort of long form thing, which you're not
yeah,
as much into. And I
depends on
but
the album.
yeah, an album that holds together is really an amazing feat, and
Yeah,
I'm into it. So
yeah, me too.
uh,
Me too.
yeah,
All
all
right.
right,
Well, there we go.
yeah, there
Pretty
we go.
good. Pretty good. Do you know what you're going to assign me next? I
I
did peek a little bit of a
did you
playlist
look?
in there.
Yes, I
sneak a
did.
peek.
I did make the playlist public because you never look ahead. But the answer is hard rock, not really alternative, but hard rock stalwarts, The Killers. Are you familiar with The Killers?
I have heard of them, but I
Yeah.
don't know that I'd ever listened to them.
They have a few wildly popular songs. The first 2 songs on this playlist are, oh my gosh, I forgot what they're called. I forgot the names of the songs. Mr. Brightside and When You Were
Oh,
Young.
I know
Yeah.
Mr. Brightside.
Mr.
Sure.
Brightside and When You Were Young. So Mr. Brightside is off their first album. It was a huge hit. When You Were Young is off their second album and was a huge hit. I sprinkled some other tracks in here. It's longer than the Dua Lipa playlist, but not too much. And
Just
they're
34 minutes, pretty good.
yeah, they're a band out of Las Vegas.
Really?
Yeah.
I thought for
right?
some reason I thought they were. I just assumed they were European or like British or something. Huh.
Yeah. They do have sort of an aesthetic about them. I don't know. Are you familiar with Muse at all, by the way?
I don't. I mean, no.
Okay, so I would.
Are you? Is it a? I don't know what you're even talking about.
Muse
is it a
is
person, a band? Okay,
Muse is a band.
I'm not familiar with Muse, the band.
But I would put them in sort of adjacent to one another in the rock spectrum, and so and they are British, I believe. Gosh, now now I'm gonna sound like a real asshole if now is another one to bleep.
a real
a real butthead if Muse isn't British. But yeah, there is a sensibility there for sure. All right, do you have anything for me?
I do, and I thought it would be safe to go back to a comedy from our action because I've had good luck with you with comedies, and I was a little bit torn because there is a especially with Easy A being such a successful movie for you and me, that there was another high school comedy that came out a couple of years ago that I had to be taken to. It is not something I would have necessarily seen on my own, but I really loved the experience of watching it. And this is maybe 2019, maybe 18, and I think it's time to watch it again. It's a movie called Booksmart. Have you seen it?
Oh, I have seen Booksmart. It's so good.
It's a movie called Kiss Kiss Bang Bang.
I have not seen it.
Okay, so Kiss Kiss Bang Bang is not a high school movie.
Wait, can we talk about Booksmart real quick, though?
Booksmart.
No, see, this is the danger that you have if you start doing high school movies, is that is right up my alley. And so if I have seen a few movies over the last few years, it's things like that. Yeah. No, I love Booksmart.
All right. Well,
it's really
I guess no, I'm not shocked, but I'm surprised. But I'm glad that you've seen it because it is a great movie, and I feel like it felt like a flash in the pan where it was like really big for a short amount of time.
Yeah.
And then I haven't heard anybody talk about it since. So, but I'm going to have you watch an action comedy.
Okay.
Then called Kiss Kiss Bang Bang. And this is a movie that was written and I believe directed by Shane Black, who was a very popular writer. He wrote the Lethal Weapon movies, or at least the first few. So he's very big as a writer, and then started directing some stuff with mixed results. I think this is his best directorial movie, and I think might be his first. But it stars Val Kilmer and Robert Downey Jr.
What year did this come out?
Oh gosh, I don't know off the top of my head. It's older.
Approximately.
It's maybe early 2000s, I would say.
Oh,
okay. I would say maybe 2000. If I'm going to guess, 2005. Let me just real quick. Oh my God, I was so right. Kiss 2005.
Nice job.
Yes. And so it stars, as I said, Robert Downey Jr. and Val Kilmer as a really interesting buddy pair, mismatched people. I don't know. That's all I'm gonna say about it.
Okay.
I went into this movie very blank when I watched it for the first time, kind of a blank slate, and really was delighted by it. So I'm interested to watch it again. I will watch it again with you, and we'll see how we like it next week.
Awesome. Well, thank you, Travis, for exposing yourself to me.
Well, thanks for exposing yourself to me, Matt. It was good to see you again.
Yeah, good to see you. Have a good week.
All right, you too. Bye. If you would like to get a hold of us or tell us what you think, we want to hear what you think about the movies that we're watching and the artists that we're listening to. So please email us at exposingourselvespodcast@gmail.com, or find us on Facebook at Exposing Ourselves and let us know what you think there.
It's always a nuclear bomb.